Hello and welcome to Economic Forum, where we discuss various issues affecting our economy in Zimbabwe. These can be issues to do with agriculture, tourism, mining, manufacturing, and many other facets of life. We bring them here on Economic Forum in order to discuss how they impact on our economy. My name is John Masubu. Over the past few decades, many Zimbabweans have moved to different parts of the world to settle there, particularly for employment reasons, coming from home either due to reasons to do with politics or the economy itself. And they've set up there to the extent that they are now planning to invest back home. And today we're going to be talking about these diaspora remittances that are supposed to be coming from the diaspora, are already coming from there. And to discuss how far we have progressed in that area, we've invited Dr. Abicia an economist who has that subject in his mind all the time. You're so passionate about it. Dr. Ushokunze, welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yes, I've just mentioned the countries. Right. Maybe you can map out who is out there in the diaspora for us to have that confidence that they can bring something to our gross domestic product.
I'll start off by not trying to consolidate and harness the energies between the two, the one that remained here in Zimbabwe and the one that went to the diaspora. There were reasons for them to have, or for us to have that exodus of people going to the diaspora in that particular era, which then translated to others having a negative intuition or perception about where they're coming from. Whereas if you go to Europe and America, regardless of what happens in their country, they still have that American pride. Having said that, anyone in the diaspora is equally Zimbabwean. There is no difference between the one that remained and the one in the diaspora. There is not, most of the families in Zimbabwe, they have one or two relatives or siblings in the diaspora. And that particular era where in Zimbabwe we were hit by the sanctions when unawares, they sort of mitigated on that discrepancy that had been created without us being ready for such a situation, which is so painful. And these people and our families in diaspora, they literally ran the country in their own way, literally ran the economy in their own way by being in the diaspora. So we want to thank the people in the diaspora for their efforts and for us that remained here to complement their efforts as well.
In fact, you're saying they ran the country, and right now we're looking at the fact that they can actually contribute significantly to the GDP.
Yes, correct.
Once upon a time, we knew when these people went out, the improvements would be seen at family level, where you have a new wall, where children are going to school, groceries and so forth. But today, we're looking at people who can actually invest to the extent that even our head of state has set up something in order to grow that situation.
There's actually a diaspora desk at cabinet level that takes care of diaspora concerns in terms of which sectors. It's aligned to every ministry, where one can then choose which sector they want to invest in or which opportunities are presented or are available in those respective ministries through that particular desk which has been set up. If you look at the contribution of the diaspora in 2021, we had $1.9 billion worth of remittances. This is money which surpasses the gold and mining sector in Zimbabwe. Because the mining sector in Zimbabwe, they realized $7 billion. But out of that $7 billion, $4 billion to $5 billion is for overheads. It's what they bought the parts for, the equipment, etc. So the actual profit for Zimbabwe is about $2.5 billion. Whereas the diaspora remittances, everything which has been remitted has no overheads. There is no expenses. It's a clean $2 billion as we speak as of 2022. We have now reached the 22 billion mark. So when you reach a 2 billion mark, it's no longer about sending money for groceries or for school fees. they are now investing. There's a lots and lots of investments that are being done by the diaspora. If we have that desk working full throttle, we should have a diaspora consortium like the one that we had in South Africa, where they try to work with the National Railways of Zimbabwe. So we should equally have the same, where that fund, the diaspora should be able to contribute to a single fund on the basis that there has to be accountability on the part of the government itself. And transparency, that's what brings confidence. When someone wants to invest, I'm a business investment portfolio holder. When you want to invest in a certain country, you invest based on perception, not on what you see on the network. It's based on perception, what you perceive that particular country to be.
In fact, each time His Excellency the President goes to some of these countries that we mentioned at the beginning of the program, he takes the opportunity to actually address the diasporans about opportunities back home. Do you think those meetings are effective? Do you recall some which have really boosted, the contribution of diaspora?
I will speak about the Dubai one-stop shop, which happened when His Excellency and our delegation of business people went to Dubai, the Dubai Expo. As a result of us telling the true Zimbabwe story, there is no harm in being Zimbabwean, regardless of whether you're in Canada, in the US, in South Africa, you remain a Zimbabwean. You still have an end game. You will never have to live there forever. You still need to come back, which one way or the other. So I'm happy that lately we seem to be speaking on the same page with those guys in the diaspora. We've sort of cleared their doubts, and by the litany of developments that they are seeing in Zimbabwe, there is so much development in Zimbabwe. There has been a lot of projects which have commenced and completed, not just commenced but completed as well. If you look at the guys in the diaspora, the Dubai Expo, this is why we then had Mr. Mook from Dubai, one of the billionaires. He did not wait for the expo to finish. When His Excellency and his delegation was finding their way back to the airport, he said, I'm also coming with you. This is why we have Mr. Mook building a new city in Mount Hampton. He did not wait for the expo to finish.
You will continue with that. That's Dr. Abicia Ushokunze, who is our guest today. Today we are talking about the role of the diaspora in our economic development in Zimbabwe and how we can actually reinforce that role so that they contribute quite significantly to the gross domestic product of the country. So join us in the second segment of Economic Forum. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are looking at the role of the diaspora in our economic development in Zimbabwe. What are they contributing? How are they growing our economy? We've got Dr. Ushokunze, who has been involved in some of these issues and has just been telling us about some of the investors who have actually followed His Excellency the President in order to take his word on developing some investments in Zimbabwe. You mentioned the one who is building in Mount Hampton. Maybe you just want to give us an overview of what's happening around the country following those appeals.
There is no way such big names like Mook, whether it's investments, I would want to refer to as Mr. Mook. There is no way at his level and others that followed can invest in Zimbabwe if there's a risk of doing business in Zimbabwe. So it means the environment is now conducive for doing business. The ease of doing business, the one-stop shop concept that was introduced is paying out dividend. So this is why we have such big names coming through. This is why Zimbabwe will have the largest iron and steel plant In October, it will be completed. The largest in Africa, 7th largest in the world.
Well, there, Dr. Oshokunze, you're talking about trust and confidence.
Right.
But some people become skeptical when the currency is not stable and when the rates are changing like that, or when there is a policy announcement to say your money, which was in US dollars,
Right.
is now Zim dollars. Things like that make people sort of hold back their investments.
True. But that has been, or is being attended to. This is why we have a national currency, regardless of whether it has value or not. It's your national identity. Same goes for our flag. Our currency is our national identity. There is no way we can run a country without our own currency as an identification. We have the US in a multiple currency system being dominated by the US. So the US has brought stability. This is why a lot of the investors that I've spoken to and the ones that are here in Zimbabwe, they mentioned this severally, that because you're using the US dollar, we find that our investments are always stable. If you look at Zambia, if you look at Mozambique, the matikash and the kwacha, when we were growing up, we used to hear that you can buy a loaf of bread, you need to push a wheelbarrow. But look at where Zambia is today. Look at where the currency in Mozambique, the matikash. So the fluctuations in currency supported by production brings about the stability of the currency. And also whatever is in circulation has to be supported by something in the vault in the form of gold.
But when was there, Dr. Oshokunze, someone has been in the diaspora, which means they've been out of the country for some time, and there are some of these changes that have taken place. What is their point of reference besides the committee that you talked about? Someone has just jetted into the country and they really want to know more about how they can invest as diasporans. Where do they go to first thing in order for them to succeed?
We have what we call the Zimbabwe Investment Center Agency. They have volumes and volumes in the form of a hard copy and the soft copy, where they send it to you via your email, or a hard copy you can collect from the Zimbabwe Investment Agency, Development Agency, which is ZIDA. They have all the opportunities available in every sector. They have an update from all the ministries and all the sectors where they tell you this is what you can do. This is outside you and me as Zimbabweans having other opportunities as well. That, look, at my farm, I'm not as liquid as possible, but I have the infrastructure, I have the land. Why can't we have joint ventures or can you have a partnership? There are lots of partnerships. This is what the government said. Because the farmers, most of the farmers have no security or something that the bank really treats as security, whether the 99-year lease or the offer letter. This is why His Excellency encourages a lot of joint ventures and partnerships. We have lots of those with guys in the diaspora on the ground as we speak, right? And then we also have companies running which are owned by shareholders in the diaspora as well, without having to go through ZIDA. ZIDA has a threshold with the calling investor. You have to have a minimum investment of $500,000 for you to be called an investor. Whereas a lot of the guys in the diaspora might not have that kind of a threshold. Some will have a few, but the majority will have to invest in other lower-hanging fruits, which have quick returns.
Over and above all those that you're talking about, Dr. Oshokunze, there are also those who are investing in their rural homes, they're building mansions and so forth, but in forms of business, so that those mansions, those places can be sustainable.
Right.
What else is possible in the rural area so that it's not only houses, but even when they come back, they're able to generate some income from that source? The type of agriculture obviously has to change.
True.
Some of them have built on their fields and so forth.
True.
Yes, if you can advise.
True. In the rural areas, if you look at Wodemaya, the YouTuber, when he did the documentary on Zimbabwe, and when I also did a documentary on Zimbabwe, I did a documentary on behalf of Zimbabwe in my own capacity with a television channel called Somanyulu for Turkey. It's called Aina Zimbabwe. I did 3 volumes. And after that, when I was traveling all over Zimbabwe, I realized the guys in the diaspora, now they realize the value of what we used to call settlements, Maruzeva, or rural areas. And the kind of production that is there, they have moved from that picture of being in the rural. They've transformed rural into proper commercial agriculture. They set up tanks. Wherever I've gone, they've set up tanks, irrigation systems, drip irrigation, the pumps, a little bit of this and that in terms of mechanization in their own small way. Because even during the times of the colonial era, 70% of the grain which was produced in Zimbabwe was not being produced by the commercial farmers. The commercial farmers were focusing on apples, on plums, on tobacco, on sugar beans. The majority of the grain that was produced was the guys in the rural settlements, which contributed 70% of the grain during the colonial era.
Dr. Abicia Ushokunze, who is our guest today, is an economist, and we are talking about the diaspora remittances. Actually, in the third and final segment, we shall be looking at figures. What are we talking about when we are talking about the diaspora? What figures are there to give us evidence that they are making significant contributions? So join us in the third segment. We are now in the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where today we are talking about diaspora remittances. What are we getting out of the diaspora with all our friends and relatives who are now settled there? And of course, Dr. Abicia Ushokunze here, who is helping us go through that. We have been giving all that background and some of the opportunities that are available, including the drive by His Excellence to make sure that the diasporans actually participate in our economy. Let's talk about the figures. Are we convincing? Do we think that we can continue with the diaspora, or is just another side issue?
In fact, the diaspora, I would not even want any of those guys to come back at the moment, because the contribution is quite immense. Yes. It has been, the graph has never gone down, except in the time of the COVID, where the international global system probably was not as 100% in terms of business. But as we speak, $2 billion. 2022, 2021, $1.9 billion. Previously, we're playing around 178 million, 200 million, but there was a huge shift in 2018. That's when the figures the graph started growing towards and the 1 billion mark, and then extending beyond the 1 billion mark. As we speak, the $2 billion, it has another, I think, 200 million on the side, 2.2. Meaning that trajectories, projections, or forecasts, given the current developments in the country, there is a lot of confidence. I must say this, because I speak with the guys in diaspora. I speak to the business community globally. I'm also part of the IMF. I have guys in the IMF, guys in the World Bank that I speak to as we exchange notes. Yes, when they write their reports in the New York Times, they also ask us questions before they make the final publication. Yeah. But if we are to work with executives, the true reflection on what's on the ground, Zimbabwe, they are really excited about the latest development in the country. It has brought about a lot of confidence to the guys in the diaspora. They want to invest more and more. There will be more remittances, there will be more business ventures from the diaspora. So $2 billion is not a joke. End of this year, if we look at the pattern, we might reach $2.5 or $2.8 billion easily. And then if you look in SADC as a region, in Sub-Saharan Africa and SADC, we are realizing between $50 to $53 billion. So never underestimate the power of the guys in the diaspora.
How about the exchanges in terms of bringing this money home? Is the situation now better, or we still have a situation whereby you go by the street corner, you meet someone who will give you the money in exchange for RTGS and so forth, or our banking system has also embraced that?
Our banking system has embraced that. When the money reaches Zimbabwe, the official rate plus what's on the street, we don't follow what's on the street, because that's when you start getting duped. But the rates which are being offered by government are very lucrative. They're very meaningful. You can do a lot by using the government official rate. This is why when you walk into a grocery store, the rate is more or less the same as whatever they want to call the grey or the black market. But there's been some changes in tightening of the monetary controls and discipline, as far as not entertaining the mega projects payments. There was a time when they were actually frozen to make sure there is still some level of discipline within the financial sector. There is nothing under the sun that does not have an ending. This will come to an end. this will come to pass. Zimbabwe never used to use a multiple currency system. We had one of the strongest currencies in the world, pre-independence, post-independence. And it can still happen again. What will bring about a stable currency is production. What will bring a stable currency is the performance of the economy. And if you look at Zimbabwe in Southern Africa, we are one of the countries that has the growth projections which are higher than most of the countries in Southern Africa.
One of the issues that the diasporans have raised is that we want the money, we want the investment. You've just said that you wish that they can stay there for much longer. But they're saying they are not being given the opportunity to participate in the local governance of the country through elections where they have a diaspora vote as we are going into the elections.
Right.
Your view?
In fact, there is something which is on the table. I remember that there are concerns whenever His Excellency addresses those the people in the diaspora. You've noticed whenever each country goes to, whether Britain or Australia, they ask the same question. So futuristically, I'm sure later they will look into it in terms of legislation and in terms of what it takes to accommodate the guys in the diaspora. That's up to the leadership itself and what the parliamentarians take into account and what it's my belief when something is being raised, sooner or later it will be addressed by the leadership.
How about having invested their monies here and they still remain in the diaspora where you want them to remain for much longer? Are they able to get any amounts from here in order to also develop their other businesses in the countries where they've decided to settle?
Yeah, there is actually legislation. There's actually policies from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe that guarantees, and that particular desk that also guarantees, though there's much that people want to invest where they are staying at the moment. They want to invest as much as they can in Zimbabwe, but there is that two-way traffic.
Is it the business of the diasporans themselves to actually promote or market investment opportunities in Zimbabwe?
Well, it is the business of the Zimbabweans that are here and the guys in the diaspora, because they are in the diaspora. This is where much of the perception, the negative perception, used to come from. So they can now portray Zimbabwe in its right taste, and this taste that was there before can be sold by them being our true ambassadors individually in their respective countries. Every Zimbabwean should be an ambassador for Zimbabwe. So the investment opportunities should start with the guys in the diaspora there, because they also have other ideas which are way smarter because they are in the advanced world. So we equally want them to sell the true Zimbabwe story and present business opportunities to the guys, to the investors in the diaspora as well. This is why I tend to follow a lot of the developments in the diaspora, because there is a lot of positive talk lately in the diaspora. In almost 90, if not 99%, they are doing a good job by selling Zimbabwe.
In his wisdom, His Excellency the President decided to actually have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs also incorporating international trade. True. How is that helping the diaspora? Are they visiting those offices in order to get all this information you're talking about in very few seconds that are remaining?
Yeah, in fact, there's been a concern from the diaspora to say, can we have more one-stop shops in most of the country they're staying in? We like the one in Dubai and that desk here in Zimbabwe. They are asking for more of those desks in their respective countries, so they can sell the Zimbabwe story in a more channeled, in a more professional, in a more when they hear there's a government desk, it makes a lot of sense than when two people in their individualism speak about how Zimbabwe or how great Zimbabwe is.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Abicia Oshokunze.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Abicia Oshokunze has been our guest on the Economic Forum and has been talking about diaspora remittances. If you would like to get in touch with us on this program, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. If you'd like to engage with us, you can also do so on the social media platforms that are also showing. If you have missed some of the episodes of Economic Forum, you can actually watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of our guest economist, Dr. Abicia Oshokunze, and the production crew, this is John Masugu wishing you happy viewing.